911, what is your emergency?
Units respond code 3 to a 1050 on the highway. Vehicles are blocking multiple
We're en route
lanes
to the
of travel.
hospital. Patient is currently having
We've got a
cardiac
4-alarm
arrest and has
fire
been
here.
intubated.
Send
Protesters
additional
are
trucks.
outside of City Hall and they are not complying with our
Out
orders
on one.
to
Hold the
disperse.
air.
In a rapidly changing world for first responders where it seems that every day the rules and norms are changing, there is one voice you can count on to give you the latest in emergency news. That is Lifeline.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Lifeline 911 Podcast with your host, Erica.
Hello.
I am your co-host, Gary, and today we are going to be discussing how to supervise in an emergency call center.
Dun, dun, dun.
Yes, it requires a little bit different skills than just your run-of-the-mill supervision.
Yeah.
And we're going to talk about both the general information that you need to have if you're going to supervise, and then like some more industry-specific things that you need to think about when being a supervisor. So when I'm talking about a supervisor, I'm talking about a frontline supervisor, somebody who supervises like the 911 call takers and the 911 dispatchers.
Yes.
And, lots of questions get asked about, how to perform your job. So let's start with some of the basics of supervision that sort of apply to just general supervision. So in our previous episode, we talked about being teachable, kind of.
Yes.
And I think that's a very good quality for a supervisor to have, because
Absolutely.
you want to be able to understand more and learn more and keep growing. Because if you stop, if you think that you've reached the pinnacle of where you're at, you'll never get any better.
Agreed. You stunt your own growth.
Yeah. And you definitely don't want to do that as
No.
a supervisor.
No. And I think the people that are in your charge will appreciate someone who is still teachable. Mm-hmm. Someone who is still able to say, I don't know. Or come to them and ask their opinion or ask their expert opinion. Because, in the last episode, we were talking about being able or willing to go to the subject matter expert. Like in our case, for me specifically, I would say teletype is something that is not in my wheelhouse at all.
Yeah.
I know the bare bones basics, and it is nothing for me to go and find my TT wires, whether they're actually at the consoles or not, or just milling around. I'm like, hey, you know more than I do about this subject. Come here. I need to pick your brain. And what I love about this industry, unlike any other that I've worked in, is most of the time when that happens, that subject matter expert that is the teletype operator will absolutely spill their knowledge and their expertise without reservation, and they don't have an ego with it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I think a lot of times they're very happy to let you know, and it's not sort of a like, oh, you're so stupid, you don't know how to do this. It's like, I get to share something with my supervisor, and if you've cultivated a good relationship with your people, you often share things with them. So they're happy, and it makes them feel a valued member of the team to share back with you.
Yes.
Because for me, like, I have a general understanding of what teletype does. I know they confirm warrants and they enter warrants, and there's a magical system that they do that on.
Yep.
And there's a $H message that comes through every once in a while. And like, but I don't know the nuts and the bolts specifics on that. And I, like, anytime I ask a teletype question, I try and, increase my knowledge of it.
Right.
But if I had to work that position, we would be in a sorry state of affairs.
Dear gosh.
Yeah.
It would not be good.
No,
For
no.
me, you don't want me back there by myself. No.
But like I understand the purpose of it and the general principles behind it. So when like a teletyper comes to me, somebody working teletype comes to me and asks me a question on what to do, I can give them an answer on like what they need to do, even though I may not myself know how to execute that.
Yeah,
exactly.
the mechanics of it.
Yeah, but I can say, no, we need to, cancel this before, moving on, and you need an admin message. Like, I know the general specifics, so I can give direction when needed.
Yeah. But like we said, I think in the last episode about knowing when to say, I don't know. Mm-hmm. And that is one that's one function in our center that I'm not versed in. But I also know that if they don't know and I don't know, we're going to find someone.
Yeah.
And we're going to get the answer.
Because especially for teletype, there is a number that you can call 24/7, 365.
Yep.
I don't know, it's like FBI or something, but somebody somewhere will answer that phone and they will tell you what you need to know.
Yep.
So,
I've never had to do it I've come close. Mm-hmm. I've come close. But for the most part, when I've had to answer a question, it would be more or less, give me the authority to do this. And it
Yeah.
always makes me think about, and I don't know how many Star Trekkers out here, but I'm going out there because
Okay.
that's one of my favorite shows, The Next Generation.
I've heard about it.
Because Kirk, I can't with him. I just can't. But anyway.
Oh, Kirk is great. Okay.
What? All right.
We'll have an episode on Star Trek.
We will not. Not on that one. But what I used to love about Captain Picard or anyone of the senior staff, when they found themselves in a situation that they needed everyone on, they needed the whole team to figure out, they looked to each one for their strengths. Mm-hmm. And they said, you're the expert on this. What do you think? And you're the expert on this. What do you think? And they would hear all of the answers back to them, from the people who are experts, and then they would make their choices. But they would also, they had value. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense, what I'm trying to say? Because when I find myself with a teletype operator who is asking me, give me the authority to do this, I'm trusting that they're not coming to pull the wool over my eyes. They are saying, I just need your authority, but I trust their knowledge. I trust that they have the right motivation. And I think it's important for a supervisor, especially in emergency communications or emergency services, that you trust the people that are under you. And you have to be able to say, you know what, I'm going to let you go with what you know, and I have your back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because ultimately, a lot of times all they do is they need that permission to do A, B, or C, and they just have to check with the supervisor on duty. And, you as a supervisor can know enough to say, yeah, this is, what we need to do in terms of this is the general principle to operate under.
But you're trusting you're trusting in the fact that they know more about the intricacies of how this works, and you are trusting their motivation. That's it. That's what I'm looking for.
Okay.
You trust the motivation behind them asking you not to do something wrong. There's no trickery involved, but that they know that you trust them enough to say, yes, you have my authority to go and make this decision, or pull the lever, or don't pull the lever. That I think that it's when you cultivate that kind of relationship on a regular basis, then they can come to you with that, and you both walk away feeling safe in the decision that you've both contributed to.
Yeah, and humility is, I think, an important part of being a supervisor. So I always prided myself on being a really excellent dispatcher back when I was a dispatcher.
Yeah.
And just being fast and accurate and just being really good. And I think I was.
I was all right.
Yeah.
You was all right, Gary.
But I recognize now, since it's been a number of years since I've actually done the job consistently, that my skills are not what they once were.
Of course.
And
because it's perishable.
Yeah.
And everybody knows that.
Yeah. I mean, my knowledge of it is, but the muscle memory is not, what it used to be.
Right.
And it's, we were kind of talking about in the last episode on whether you should promote to a leadership role. It's sort of, I'm no longer the focus of, my day, if you will. I try to have my chargers be the focus, so they're the superstars that they're the cops are oh man, this dispatcher did an excellent job, or this 911 operator got some excellent information that we needed. Mm-hmm. So it's more of a kind of vicarious pride, I
Agreed.
guess.
Okay.
Than, it is actually sitting in that hot seat and being that, the gunner on the Millennium Falcon.
Yep.
but like it's still it's just a different kind of feeling, and you can't always be the center of attention.
No.
I did kind of, since you brought it up, I was wanting to recommend a book that on leadership that I think is really good.
Yes.
There's a leadership book called "Make It So: Leadership Lessons from Captain
Yep.
Picard."
So good.
You don't even have to be a fan of Star Trek to get a lot out of this book, but basically it breaks down leadership into 7 core principles that all good leaders follow. Because if you ever watch Star Trek: The Next Generation, they hired a leadership expert to help write for them, or to at least give them what is that when you offer advice? Consult. Thank you. It'd be a consultant for them in terms of like how Picard would manage the Enterprise, and so you see a lot of really excellent leadership qualities throughout the show in him, and then in his staff as well. Because as you said, he would call them together to the ready room to ask them, number one, what do we do in this situation?
Wow.
That thick French accent that he had. But he had a lot of good qualities that you look for in a really good leader, and this book kind of distills that down. So if you are a supervisor of any kind, I would highly recommend that you get the book, Make It So: Leadership Lessons from Captain Picard.
So good.
But anyway, that's my tangent on that.
Well, I think out there in podcast land, we are 2 Star Trek: The Next Generation geeks, if you will.
Yeah, during TC week, I wore my Starfleet uniform.
Did you really?
I did.
Oh, man, I missed it. I was in D.C.
Yep.
Oh, good.
That's fine.
All right, fine.
But yeah, so, being humble, very, very important to leadership. It helps you grow.
Yep.
Also, having a strong knowledge of whatever your department or organization's policies are. Be
Yep.
they, general orders for a police department or whatever SOPs you operate under, because you have to really kind of be you have to be the subject matter expert in that.
Yes. And be willing to, or actually be willing to have a habit of operating within those.
Yes.
You can't be the Lone Ranger out there just making your stuff up as you go and then attempt to then hold your charges accountable for rules, SOPs, general orders, regulations, best practices that you yourself don't do.
No.
That does not go over well. And I in my time of working, because I'm only 25.
Yes, of course.
I've
started when you were 4.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I've seen some leadership that does not do that. It's more of a do as I say, not as I do. Mm-hmm. And
how did that make you feel?
I hated it.
Yeah. You didn't feel like super charged up for the day that you wanted to do your best for them?
And that's just, and I guess if we're talking about supervising in this environment, what I love about this environment is these people are problem solvers on an elite level.
Yeah.
This is all they do every day, all day is solve problems. Yeah. They make people's lives better, different.
And they're life and death problems.
And they are. And so it's so disrespectful to attempt to lead them, if you will, and not hold yourself to the same standard as you would hold them. Mm-hmm. It is, considering what they do every day, so important. I just think that you have to hold yourself to even a much higher standard as a person in leadership, either over them or, propping them up, because it is what they do every day is just it's intense and it's important, and the last thing they need is a maniac.
Tell us what you really think about it.
No, I'm just going to be real honest about it. This is a passionate subject. The work's hard enough. Mm-hmm. What they don't need is a Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, or I don't know who the supervisor is going to be when I walk in today. Mm-hmm. Is it going to be Mrs. Jekyll or Mrs. Hyde? Mm-hmm. That consistent way of being is something you always
Yeah.
mention.
Yeah, because you want to, like as you said, hold yourself to a high standard and hold the people that work for you to a high standard as well. My dad was a supervisor here for many years, and
Legend.
he would always tell me there were 4 things that his employees had to do. They had to be on time, do their jobs, don't cause problems on his floor, and don't lie to him.
Yep.
And if you did those 4 things, he'd have your back and, be able to lead you. But if you did any of those things, especially that last one, don't lie. Don't be ethical people. But,
Yeah.
you've got to hold yourself and your people to those standards. Because if they see you, like we were talking about the PED policies a couple of weeks ago, if they see you playing like a video game or something, they're just going to lose all motivation to do anything, especially if you're the frontline supervisor.
Yeah.
You really set the tone for how things are done.
Yeah.
And for me, we've been having a lot of new programs that we're using for timekeeping lately. And I know that for me, I have not been getting out and talking to people as much as I like to on the floor and seeing how they're doing, because I just feel swamped every day with work. But it's important to get out there and talk to your people, get to know your people. There was one of our employees, he's new to the shift and new to the division, but I talked to him several times, and I knew his name, but he came up to me after I had answered one of his questions. He was like, "Hey, what's your name?" I was like, I didn't even think that he wouldn't know my name. So
Right. Wow.
that is a terrible feeling for me to have, especially since normally I have it on my shirt somewhere. But you definitely want to get out there and talk to your people.
And they should be, I like to say the job is hard enough. It is a high pressure, fast paced environment a lot of times. And you as the supervision, or I try, let me fix it. I try to give off the persona that you can approach me.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not walking around with my invisible, I don't know, what is it, my hammer.
Yes.
Just ready to whack someone for the first mistake. I want people to feel like if they see me coming, they don't want to shrink back or duck because here comes the supervisor.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want that. I don't want that feeling out there. I don't want people to think of me and immediately go, "Oh dear,
Yeah.
she's coming for me." And I remember what it was like to have had supervision in the past, that if I'm sitting at my radio and I'm working and I look up and I see them, I already know it's a problem.
Yeah.
Why do I know that? Because I never talk to them otherwise.
Yeah. And that's,
Not okay.
conducive. Yeah.
Not okay.
Because you're not going to be able to build up any trust or any credibility.
There is absolutely no trust. And I remember thinking as a frontline person, what do you want? I already know that it's not going to be a good conversation, so spit it out, get it over with, go ahead and cut me so I can go on about my business.
Exactly.
Because you're not here for anything other than that, because you never say hello, you never spend any other time on the floor, and we don't interact unless there's a problem, and that's not good.
Yeah, and because as a leader, you think of it like you've got a bank, and into this bank you deposit your little credit tokens that you earn from people by talking to them, guiding them, giving them good advice, and guiding them around. And then there will come occasions where you have to spend that credit, that leadership credit that you have, where you might have to do something that they don't agree with, or come down on a situation that they would have come down on a different way if they'd been in charge. But you gain and you spend it, but you want to develop that where people they trust you, and I think being consistent is really key with that. Like you talked earlier about the Mrs. Jekyll and Mrs. Hyde.
Yeah.
You want to be the same person every day. And leave whatever your personal things are at the door when you come in, and that way people know who they're getting every day.
Yes.
And there are days when as a supervisor you might just be kind of at the end of your rope, Yeah.
What?
Well,
That
you know,
doesn't ever happen, Gary.
yeah, but it's really important to make sure you understand that you're representing the structure and the organization of whatever department and division you're in.
That's so true.
And they, as your charges, need you to be consistent,
Yep.
even keeled, emotionally stable.
Yeah.
And
Emotionally stable.
yeah, emotionally stable. They may not. They don't need you to know the answer every time, but they need you to be emotionally stable.
Yes.
Because if you're not, then they're going to hesitate coming to you. They're going to feel uncertain in their work, and that's going to lead them to seek work elsewhere very quickly.
Well, and like I think the word you used, either it was the last episode or just early in this episode, trust. Mm-hmm. And you are on a daily basis with the way that you are consistent in the way that you treat everybody the same, and they know pretty much if they come to Gary with a question, he's going to answer it, and if he doesn't know, he's going to go find out the answer, but you're never going to go, What now? Mm-hmm. What do you want? And your tone isn't going to be that way. Your facial expression isn't going to be that way. And your body language isn't going to be that way. And it's that way all the time. So if you ever have a bad day, you'll be forgiven.
Yeah. Because, I mean, everybody's human. So
Everybody is.
You're going to have bad days.
And I've had great leadership in my life before where I'm like, ooh, they snapped a little bit. But they were instantly forgiven because that never happens. Mm-hmm. And I trust that that's probably going to be a one-off thing. And I can, matter of fact, I would probably be more concerned, like, okay, is there anything I can do? Mm-hmm. Because you are always consistently kind or patient and fair. All of the things that you want in your leadership, right? You want that so that if you have an off day, as you are bound to in the course of 10 years.
Yeah.
And the same, they're much more willing to forgive you than they would be otherwise.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, it's a constant drip that wears away the mountain. It's also being consistent with people. It helps build your credibility, and it changes people from following someone because they're de jure or by law power. So, You might be a supervisor, but you might not have people follow you into the gates of hell if you're not seen as a leader.
I love this because if anybody out there has ever watched the show Scandal.
I have not.
Oh, my gosh. You have not lived. It's a soap, of course,
Of
but
course.
that's okay. But please, guys have soaps. Don't even get me started. My husband has soaps. He won't admit it, but he does. Anyway, back to Scandal. There's a saying about Olivia Pope and her team. They will follow her literally over a cliff. Mm-hmm. And that's what you want as a supervisor, if you will, that if you were to ever say to your team, I need you guys to follow me, like you said, into the gates of hell or over a cliff or stay late, stay over when they really wouldn't want to, they will for you because of the trust that you've built, because of the relationship that you've built, because of the currency that you've built up with them. And that goes a long way. And that all starts with the way that they feel. It starts with trust.
Yeah. And I mean, as you may have discovered by now, I'm kind of a major movie person. I like movies.
Yeah.
There's a scene at the end of The Lord of the Rings, the third movie, where Aragorn is giving a speech before they charge in to the Black Gate. And he just says, we have to make our stand here and fight. And, he starts running forward, and he doesn't look behind him to make sure his army's going with him. He just knows that they will be.
That is very cool. I've never seen those, but that sounds amazing.
You haven't seen The Lord of the Rings?
No.
Oh, okay. That's another topic. But it's like, if you are a supervisor, ask yourself, do I feel like that? Like if I were to go charging off,
nice,
would I at all doubt that my team was following me?
That's good.
And if the answer is yes, then just as Michael Jackson said, you have to look at the man in the mirror and, see why.
That's the question, though.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't they? I love that because you're right. And one of our colleagues says this all the time, that she is the way that she is with her people consistently and on a regular basis, so that if she ever has to come down on them, meaning she doesn't enjoy that, of course, but if she ever has to make a correction, if she ever has to challenge their behavior and have a conversation that is not fun, they can walk away from that conversation knowing that it is forgotten after it's been dealt with, and they still will come to her with their questions, their concerns, their problems, and everything's good. And if she asks them to do something without explanation, they trust her enough to just do it.
Yeah.
And it makes me think about what you just said. If I walk over and I say, I need you to do X, Y, and Z, they're going to go, I don't really understand, but okay.
Yeah. Like if you were
That's
to,
huge.
If you were just to go out on the operations floor and you're just to yell out, I need everyone to log off and follow me right now, and head towards the door,
Yeah.
would they do that? Like and that's just something to think about.
Yeah.
I wouldn't recommend that because people do need their 911 calls answered. But
Agreed. But what you're saying,
Yeah.
though, is they would probably, for a split second, they'd be like, okay, this is a very strange and unorthodox order that he's giving me, but he's never given me a weird one before.
Right.
He's never told me to do anything that would hurt us, though this feels completely unnatural. I'm going to do it because he said so.
Yeah, and that's again, you build that with consistency, and following policy and procedures so people know where they stand with you.
Agreed. Well said.
Yeah, and you don't want to really ever blindside people with like discipline or anything. I try and make it so if there is any discipline coming, people are aware of it.
Yeah.
Because,
You have the hard conversation that you need to have.
Yeah.
And know that, because we had to do this fairly recently, we had to have a conversation with someone, and we had to let them know, okay, so at the end of this conversation, that discipline didn't come that day, but when we all walked out of the office, it was resolved, but they know, hey, in a matter of days, you're probably going to open your inbox, and here's going to be the thing that we talked about
Right.
in written form. But at least it's not out of nowhere. Hey, can I talk to you in the office? And because they trust you, and they've got that level of trust with you, they don't automatically instinctively think that there's a problem when they see you, and then bam, you blindside them with this horrible discipline
Right.
about something that would happen 3 months ago, and they don't even remember what it is.
Exactly. Yeah, because you want it whenever, as a supervisor, you always want to, whenever especially if it's a behavioral issue, you want to immediately address that, even if the ultimate resolution, be it like paperwork in somebody's life or discipline, might not be for a while later. Immediately nip that in the bud, because you don't want that to persist and continue.
Agreed. Yeah.
And I've always tried to approach a performance issue with people more from the aspect of they might need additional coaching or mentoring, rather than it being a straight up behavioral issue, depending.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
there are some times when it's just like, well, you were screaming at this lady to shut up on the 911 phone. I can't.
There's nothing I can do with
There's
that.
no training you need for that. But a lot of times I found that if you approach it from more of a performance rather than a behavioral standpoint, you can get a better result. Because
I agree.
if people are coming here, they probably want to do the best they can.
Yeah.
Because as you'll find out in your career in government, it's not about making oodles of cash.
What?
No, it's or glory or anything. It's about serving your
You
community.
don't say.
Yeah. So, make sure that you're upfront and forthright, and never lie to your people.
Yes.
There have been times when, I've had information that I couldn't share with them for one reason or
we
another.
talked about that.
Yeah. But I have never, that I can recall, lied to them. I mean, I might say I can't talk about that or
Yes,
something.
yeah.
But I never have knowingly told somebody something that was untrue.
Agreed. You didn't lead with deception.
Yeah.
You didn't come out the gate with the sole purpose of deceiving them.
Yeah. Now, there have been times that I was deceived and then that deception was relayed to them, but it was never something that I intended.
Ouch.
Yeah.
That had to hurt.
Well, it's fine.
That's how you know it isn't fine. When they go, it's fine.
It's fine.
It's fine.
But yeah, it's very important they have to trust you. Like if like there's so many things that you can not do as well as a supervisor, but if you don't have that trust, that integrity with your staff, I mean, they'll forgive you for being like, you know what, guys, I need a slack day where I'm just gonna like stare at the wall for 4 minutes. You know, like they can forgive that, but like anything that harms their trust in you
is bad.
It's bad.
It's very difficult to recover from.
If at all possible.
Yeah.
Because like they'll never forget that.
No, they may not ever forget it, but I think it'll. If you can recover it, it's going to be a long walk.
Yeah.
It's going to be a very long walk. But to that, something that just popped up in my mind as we're talking about this. Supervisors, a lot of times, they don't say I'm sorry.
No.
They don't apologize when they're wrong. It is actually okay to go back to an employee and say, you know what, if you overreacted, then say that. If you made an assumption, say that.
Even if you gave them wrong information.
If you gave them wrong information, unwittingly or unintentionally, say that.
Yeah. Hey, remember when I told you to do A, B, and C? I was mistaken. You need to do D, E, and F.
Right. But you might even go so far as to be a little snappy. It is okay to go back and say, I'm sorry. I apologize. Mm-hmm. I shouldn't have spoken to you in that way. I should have been more professional, whatever that looks like.
Yeah.
And I know you're looking at me a little sideways right now, but that happened to me once. I had a supervisor absolutely go in, and I will never forget when she came back and said, you know what? I was wrong. I apologize. And then she said, this. These were the ways I was wrong, and I apologize.
Yeah.
Never forgot it, and it's probably been 20 years.
Yeah. And I'm like, did your level of respect go up or down for her?
Through the roof.
I was kind of looking at you sideways because I'm like, a lot of these things are just like what you should do as a decent human being. But
you forget what happens in a pressure cooker environment like this, and you know, if you have that mentality that I am the supervisor, I am the boss, and I can't lose face, then that means I cannot go back and apologize. And by apologize, I don't mean my bad. Mm-hmm. I mean a genuine apology and own your wrongness. I was watching something the other day, and it was a husband and wife arguing, and she said, I was wrong, and he said, no, I need you to stand there in your wrongness.
The West Wing.
Yes.
I think that was the pilot episode.
Yes.
You stand there in your wrongness and be wrong.
It was Jeb Bartlett and Abigail, one of my favorite shows I'm watching right now on Max.
Yeah, it's a great
I've
show.
probably seen it from the beginning to the end. I don't even know how many hundreds of times I could recite some of these lines. But yes, he said, I need you to stand there in your wrongness. And it was
wrong.
amazing. And just be wrong. Yes. But you'd be surprised at the number of supervisors or people in leadership that will not say, I am sorry.
Yeah, and I think as a supervisor, I haven't really seen a lot of this, but like you can't think that your charges are beneath you. Like they're not there to serve you.
Right.
Really, you're there to make sure that they are as prepared and confident in their own abilities as you can. It was a couple of episodes ago where I had said that my goal as a supervisor is to not do any work, and I had kind of elaborated a little bit on what I meant by that, and it was that I want my charges to feel confident in themselves that they don't need me.
Right.
And it takes a lot of work to get there. And you as a supervisor have to be patient and guide them and, nurture them to grow and to be their best version of themselves that they can be.
Yeah.
But ideally, like, I would love as a supervisor to just come in and I'm running coffee to people all day because they don't need me to do anything else.
Yeah, and that doesn't mean I want to sit and do nothing.
Yeah.
That means I have created an environment to where I don't have to put out fires left and right.
Yeah, I don't want to sit there and do nothing. It's just I have nothing to do.
Yeah, there it is. And I feel that way about the leads, and almost like because for us, it's the leads, frontline, and then us is the next tier, if you will.
Sure.
If I feel like if I've done my job and I got this from the supervisor that I feel like I came up under, the legend, the man,
The myth.
Elmore. Yeah. He would say, just roll me out of the way,
Yep.
call somebody, and run it till they get here. And I try my best as a supervisor to give the leads in my charge the authority, if you will, and the confidence that if Erica is the only supervisor on duty and she drops dead, roll her out of the way,
And keep going.
call some people and say, Erica done dropped dead. There's no supervisor living in the moment, but they can run it until someone gets here.
Yeah.
But that can only happen if I train them and I empower them
Yes.
to feel safe making decisions, that they don't have to run to the back and ask me every little A and D. And I know I have seen supervision like this, where everything has to go through them, but you're not training your replacement in that regard. And I think that's, especially in this environment, because anything can happen.
Yeah. I mean, you're not training your replacement. You're weakening and demoralizing, your leads.
Yeah.
Who are kind of like corporals in
Yes.
our sense. And you're also just putting a whole bunch of work on your own plate.
Unnecessarily.
Because if, the people, your charges, if they feel confident that they can make a decision, on especially the mundane things, then, that frees you up to do other things, quality assurance or whatnot.
Sure.
But yeah, I think that's, entirely correct. Roll me out of the way.
Just
'cause-
roll me out of the way, call somebody,
Yeah.
but run it till they get here.
Yeah.
That is my motto. I love it.
Kind of going along with that, I wanted to talk to you about, because I distinctly remember my first day as a supervisor when I was the only supervisor on duty. Maybe not so much the actual things that happened, but I remember the feeling of relieving the previous shift and knowing that I'm it.
Yeah.
And it's a
Sobering.
it's a sobering moment to have, and it's a heavy kind of weight, because again, you kind of wonder, am I going to be able to get through this day?
Yeah.
But it's really I think everyone on their first day as a supervisor, when they're the first time they're alone, they don't have a
Right.
more senior supervisor with them.
Yeah.
Feels that. I was just curious do you remember feeling that at all?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I do. And for me, it was a second go round because I was a supervisor and then left, but that's many years in between. So I remember that day, and I remember thinking to myself, okay,
Here goes.
oh, here we go.
Yep.
But I also loved looking to the front of the room and seeing the leads that were on duty and thinking, okay, all right, we'll be fine, because they know what they're doing. And I kid you not, I remember thinking about the episode of Star Trek: The Next Generation,
Sure.
where Counselor Troy was the ranking individual on the she was on the bridge at the time.
Season 6 episode Disaster. Yes.
That's disturbing on so many levels that you know it quite like that. But I was close, because I think Ensign Rowe was on there.
Yep.
And
O'Brien.
O'Brien, yeah. And I remember her going, okay, she was the ranking person. She had the rank, but she didn't have the experience, and she didn't have all of the knowledge, but she trusted the team that was there with her. And I remember thinking very specifically, oh, okay, I've got two very strong leads, so that if it all goes to pot, I don't have to grab them by the hand and we all go.
Yeah.
That's what I remember.
That episode is referenced in the Make It So book I was discussing earlier, by the way.
Yep. Leadership lessons from Captain Picard.
Yes. It's a very good episode because everybody on the crew was placed in a position that they were weak in, and they had to kind of get through. Like Picard was placed with children.
Yeah.
And because he wasn't a parent, so he had like no idea how to
Interact
with kids.
Hilarious.
Yeah. But yeah, I like it. That first day alone is like gonna feel kind of stressful, but realize that you've got people with you that, everybody there is pulling for you because nobody wants the captain of the ship to sink.
Yeah.
And they they're going to, like, they know their job and they're looking to you to just kind of keep things, on the smooth and steady path.
Yeah. But that's that humility too that we were talking about, making, you're humble enough to know that you don't have all the answers, but you have built that trust, and you will allow your team to do their jobs, and it's not about you being the star because you are the quote unquote boss.
Yeah.
And the ship will sail it'll do well with you at the helm if you're not a maniac.
Yeah, just don't be a maniac.
Don't be crazy.
And
It's not that serious.
yeah, I mean,
It's just not.
yeah, there's no, and this kind of moves into my last point that I kind of wanted to make is you want to be the rock. And what I mean by that is when things get stormy and the waves are crashing, people need to see that you as a supervisor are calm no matter what's going on. If the phone lines go down or if they're doing some work and somebody flips a breaker and half of the dispatch consoles go down.
Oh, that was crazy.
Yeah, or there's a riot and people are like, blocking the street, the major highway in your city. People need to look to you to see you be calm, cool, and collected, knowing what to do. Even though you may not feel like that.
What is it, a duck on the water?
Yeah.
Where on the top it looks like they're just kind of doom, but if you go underneath the water, their feet are going a mile a minute. Yeah.
Exactly. And because, we've made like 6 references to Star Trek already, there's another episode of Star Trek The Next Generation where Captain Picard and Dr. Crusher get mind linked together and they're trying to escape from being captured.
Oh, yes.
And,
I remember that episode.
Yeah. And so Captain Picard, they get to like a fork in the road and Captain Picard's like, we need to go this way. And Dr. Crusher, since she's mind linked with him, is like, you don't really know which way to go.
Yeah.
And he's like, no, I don't. But sometimes you just have to make a decision because you can't, in their case, they couldn't stay there.
Yeah.
And as a supervisor, it's very akin to that because you may not know the right answer all the time. And sometimes there will come a time when you have to just make a decision.
Just make a decision.
Yeah. And make the best decision you can because hopefully you as a supervisor feel confident in your chain of command that they will back you.
That's true.
Just
So
as
true.
just as your charges feel confident in you, you hopefully feel confident in the people that are your superiors.
Agreed.
And that way you feel like, okay, I can make this decision, this decision that has to be made in a snap second
Yeah.
in order to, keep moving on. And we'll revisit it later if there was a mistake.
Yeah, exactly. If I will say it all the time, I don't have any problem making a decision. I hope it's the right one, but if it's not, my leadership will say, love your enthusiasm.
Yeah.
But next time, maybe we ought to consider doing it this way.
Mm-hmm.
But you're right. We have the kind of leadership, at least I think we do, that will say, that was an interesting way to go.
Yeah. And I mean, like, I think a lot of people sometimes get a little bit of analysis paralysis, worrying about like, well, what are the Monday morning armchair quarterbacks going to think? But
they're not here.
Yeah. Sometimes, when it's like 3 a.m. and you're having a massive flood and you've just got to be like, you know what? Previous shift, you have to stay on duty until further notice.
Yeah.
And all of you are mandatoried.
Period. In the discussion. It's not, and that's not a decision that you relish making, but somebody's got to make a decision.
Yeah. And you are the only one that can make that decision.
Yep.
So don't shrink from those responsibilities when they happen. take a moment to think about them because you want to make a good logical choice, but stay calm, cool, and collected. I could make another Star Trek, but we'll skip that. But being calm in a crisis, people need that, because if you're not calm, there is no way that they are going to be calm.
Oh, no.
It's just like dispatchers on the radio. If your voice gets up there when they're like, one at gunpoint, shots fired, and like you get up there, then they're going to start to get more panic too, because they're like, oh, this, our guardian angel's getting a little nervous, so that's going to make me really nervous.
Absolutely. If they're in the foot pursuit and you're in the foot pursuit with them, then everybody's in the foot pursuit and there's no calm anywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Agreed.
that's definitely, I think, a key factor. But again, leadership lessons from Captain Picard make it so. Check out the book.
Check out the book.
Well, I think that's all the time we have today for this topic. As you can tell, it's kind of near and dear to our hearts.
Yes.
But we appreciate you all for listening. From all of us at Lifeline 911 Podcast, I'm Gary.
I'm Erica.
And we will see you next time.
Thank you for watching our production of Lifeline 911 Podcast. If you have any questions about the topics we discussed today, or if there's something specific you'd like us to cover in a future episode, send us your questions at lifeline911podcast@gmail.com. Stay safe out there. Until next time, this is Lifeline 911 signing off.